Okay, I totally understand that since we live on
Yeah.
Mars, so it's gonna be okay to
Yes.
it's totally
Yeah.
understandable and totally clear. Now, I would like to hear more about any updates that you have this week regarding your family commitments, regarding your test preparation, and regarding the document for the IELTS that I've sent you.
Let's start with the IELTS document regarding the reading. Sorry, the reading section.
Yeah.
Well, I was answering the questions, and I thought that I'm answering it's all correct. But when I got the score, it was only 5, so I was surprised and shocked.
Okay, now did you find out why you got 5 in this particular test?
I didn't check the answer after that because you know I was quite really busy, but I don't know what happened.
Okay, I think that's totally understood regarding probably not taking the IELTS test for a long time, not reading enough for the long time, not practicing the IELTS test taking mode, or you haven't had the IELTS test taking mode for a long time. That's gonna be like sufficient to get 5. 5 is not that quite frustrating, to be honest. Additionally, there is this kind of
well, the section, the graphs were very easy, and I didn't have any trouble understanding what is the concept and what is it was about. But I don't know what happened. I don't know.
No, I want you to describe in details the process of you taking the test and the kind of
first of all, it was on a laptop screen, so it was somewhat difficult because I didn't used to use the laptop for a long time. But it was okay. I just passed this step. I did it on time. I think it was for 54 minutes, and I finished it all. I think that. But while I was answering the question so confidently, I thought that my answers were correct. But I don't know what happened.
Well,
it was actually, only 5. But I think because it is like
go ahead.
Like, you know, the answers are already typed in a certain manner, but when you are typing it, you will use your own words or your own expression, so the system will not accept that.
Probably that's one of the reasons that probably is contributing. But let away the 5 the 5 out of 9 here, considering the fact that this is give me 1 second. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. 5 is not detrimental of your level, to be honest. I think once you take the test unprepared, not having enough probably mental horsepower, so to speak, we might go through some sort of issues with the test, and it's highly understandable for this kind of situations. It's completely okay. Sometimes you get 7.5, and sometimes you get in the other test, and sometimes you get 5 in reading. Reading is on average really challenging skill to the majority of people around the world when it comes to IELTS, and it's quite understandable why that is a case here. Now, before we jump in the activity of the reading section, and I want I want to check out the issue with the graph. You remember the graph that we've talked about, the global water use by sector?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, water consumption.
Okay. Now, for this, what are your comments on this particular one? Do you have any comments from the last task that you've done?
It was more challenging than the others. The others were less easier. Like I don't know, it's a dry matter. Like make a comparison between two tables, and it was not clear.
Now, why do you think it's dry? What makes you think it is this sort of dry matter for you in this case?
Because they are talking about water use, and they use the the size. I don't know. It was the size of the lands, irrigated lands. I cannot recall it. So I don't like geography and those terms. So I didn't like it.
Okay, now let's have a little bit of discussion about it before we jump into the reading here. Allow me to share the screen here so we can have some feedback and discussion regarding that.
Previously, we were discussing it is a shot or shoot. This is the usual question that I discuss it with others.
What do you mean?
Shoot or shot? Because regularly the people said shoot.
Shoot what? Like
it's a screenshot.
Screenshot. Shot.
Yeah, it's shot.
It's with one O, so there is no occasion that one O is pronounced shoot.
Yeah, but I think others consider it with double O, so they say
screenshot.
Shoot. Yeah.
Probably it's a game where people shoot screens.
Yeah.
Just when they are angry.
And the other word that I usually just have a lot of argument, not discussion regarding it. It's mechanism or mechanism. Mechanism.
It's mechanism.
So it is mechanism. It is not mechanism.
Now, this is some sort of something we call local language adjustment. Now, when the word, and it's purely technical and linguistic. I don't know if you're interested in this sort of bullshit that is called linguistics. But
no, I like it, of course.
Now, when the word travels from a country to another, or from one region to another, or from one geographic spot to another, sometimes it carries the sound or the phonetic DNA with it, along with it, and sometimes it does not. So when it gets into the borders of another country, like, for example, words like carte blanche, I think this is how they say it in French. When this expression travels to or into England, it is going to be subdued and subjected to the English phonetic system. In the English phonetic system, they have some heritage from the older language that it's coming from. We call it SL, which is the source language, to the TL, which is target language. When it gets into the target language, it is going to be subject to few modifications. One of them is phonetic modification, and some of it is lexical modification. So they change the form, or they change the sound of the word. Now, this has two dimensions, which is quite interesting. Now, it happens over a horizontal level. So people change the sound in this area this way, and people change the sound this way in this area. And there is vertical change. So in 1900, the way they used to say it this way is this way, and the way they say it now is completely different. Some of the examples might be like the word nice and the word gay. Now, the word nice in Old English was meaning something that is silly, or a person who is silly. So if somebody is doing something nice, that means they are doing something silly or funny. Now, when that word was shifted from French to English, the meaning completely took the opposite direction. The word used to be pronounced as nice, and in English it became nice. Another form of change, we call it morphological change. Now, morphology is not only in medicine and biology, it's also in English. It's complete science where they study the form of words and their origin. Now, the word gay used to mean somebody who's happy in old. So that was something we call vertical change. That vertical change is change over historical periods of time. We call it chronological change or vertical change. And there's horizontal change where the word gay is used here in this particular meaning, and the word is used to refer to something different in France or in, for example, Spain. That's we call horizontal change. So that is ultimately lead us to something we have to definitively say that there is no one single person who carries the same pronunciation features of another human being. Every person speaks with his own accent or their own accent. Everybody his own way of producing language. And there's almost no one single person in this world who shares 100% identical language chromosomes when it comes to producing
like
language.
but when someone gives you a piece of advice, like this is not pronounced well, then you have to change that word to this pronunciation. You have to obey. Like I would like and would love that someone will correct my pronunciation, but others, it's out of stubbornness or something like that.
Now, let's draw this analogy because it's quite interesting. Speaking language is like playing game, like football game. Now, no matter how many football games you play, players are not going to do the same move 100% accurate move. Like they are not going to replicate the same moves. They're going to move on the playground, but they're not going to play exactly the same moves, the same agility, the same passes or overhead shots. They're not going to do that, but they are following rules. Now, once the football goes off the line, in this case, that is going to be either an offside or foul or overhead shot or whatever that is. But they're playing by rules. Now, native speakers are playing by rules. They play like football game players. They don't leave the playground. They play within these limitations. So you can't say it this way because this is how the defense player plays it. And you can say it this way because this is how the attack player says it. Now, however, when you say, well, this is one of the fans who's saying that he's not a native speaker. He's not playing by the rules. He's not included. He's not admittedly a person with enough jurisdictions اللي هي الصلاحيات القانونية to say that this word is definitively said this way because he's not a native speaker. That is on one aspect. The other aspect is that words in general are subject to the native speaker's mother tongue. So if the mother tongue doesn't have equivalent sounds to the source language that they are speaking, like for example, in Arabic, we don't have in our mother tongue pa and ve and what else? pe, ve,
yeah, that's the point that I wanted to say, that
yeah, so
like
once
others, like you, yeah,
like, so once we don't have this kind of linguistic or phonetic equivalence, أو المكافئ الصوتي, we are going to subject the word as a slave to the mother tongue phonetic system or sound system. So the word that is going to be pronounced like Viber is going to be subject to the filter of the mother tongue phonetic system that will produce fiber. Or words like, for example, van becomes fan due to this transfer from the phonetic system of English to the phonetic system of Arabic, which will ultimately deform the phonetic system or the stability of how the word is pronounced in its own authentic original native speaker's tongue. Now, this deformity, well, the question is this deformity of words acceptable? Of course, because this is part of the phenomenon of language exchange among cultures and nations. And there is no harm of you saying fiber just because there is no word in Arabic or there's no sound in Arabic that is equivalent to ve sound, the voiced feeler ve sound. And that is actually controversial or argumentative in on your own words. Why? Because some people are very grammar Nazis, and some of them are very pronunciation Nazis, and by that means they are very extremist when it comes to, you have to say it prescriptively like this. Like it's like a patient's prescription. You have to take 3 pills 3 times, 3 days, something like that. You have to say it that way or you're wrong. So if I'm saying screenshot, well, that's a deformed version of screenshot. Now, why do I say it this way? It's just because in my mother's phonetic system, mother tongue phonetic system, it is said that way. So that's the point that I wanted to mention here. I think it's quite clear, and not clear, but it deserves some attention. So that's what I call linguistic bullshit. I don't know if you're interested in this sort of bullshit or not.
Now I'm very interested, because you mentioned an example that the British people will pronounce the word differently from the French people because they do not pronounce all the letters or the sounds.
Quite interesting.
But for us, like for us, we are Arabic people. We had the ability to pronounce all the kinds of difficult and voiceless letters, or letters with voices. I don't know how to describe it. But so we have the ability to pronounce all the kinds of letters. So why don't we take the
Zainab,
of advice?
what we follow is more of a social tradition to preserve your own identity as a speaker of Arabic. So once you flout, you breach this rule. Your social image, according to some people who care about their social image and their identity, will be shaken. Like, for example, for me personally, this is my field of expertise. So when I say the word this way or that way, people have to accept it, because I'm superior to them in this field. So they have to listen to me. It's like a dictator point of view. But for general purposes, like me talking in front of my dad and saying, like, I want a cup of water. Now, that's going to be some sort of like social embarrassment setting, where I'm kind of like threatening myself and my persona and my social image as being criticized to say something that is kind of off-putting or abnormal or out of this world. So I'm just subjecting myself to some some criticism for this sort of issues, which is very normal. I mean, some people struggle with this kind of like preserving their preserving their second language identity. They want to show off that they have this good excellence because they in pronunciation, because they spend years and years practicing and sharpening their skills. So they deserve some sort of kind of fashion show of accents and dialects. And sometimes, well, the whole social setting demands that you should just keep this to yourself and shut up and not say this kind of bullshit anymore.
Yeah, this is what I'm going to do the next time. I remember how this said.
However, this sort of feeling should be paid attention to. Like in the field of linguistics, we study this deeply and narratively and in complete microscopic details to unimaginable levels. Like people in the field of language, they study how the brain draws words and like what is the shape of vocabulary in our brain cells. Like, are they clusters? Are they like in the form of series? Are they like, it's a human brain cell. Like, how does it preserve data, like language data? What is the form? So some people like draw clusters like anaqid, and they say, well, sometimes I think of the word image.
What is the difference? I mean,
what
we're
does
in clusters or it's solitary?
What's the purpose of learning of the shape of words?
No, it said, how does it, how did where, I don't know, what did you say, if it is reserved as clusters or in solitary forms? I mean,
save the clusters in the brain. Well, there are so many benefits to it. One of the advantages of knowing the form of words is to be able to teach people accordingly. Like if the brain saves the words as forms of clusters, so we have to design some language materials that help learners speed up and expedite their learning as form of clusters, like drawing clusters, mind maps, as we say, or connecting words in a sequential order, or clustering words like image, imagine, imagery, imagination, all together, because this is how the brain processes data. And accordingly, we just following the same coding system of the brain. And eventually that is going to lead us to a faster learning of second language or foreign languages. Now, if we dial back to 1940, the reason of why English materials expanded and evolved so much is because the United States started to invade some countries in Asia. And in order to reach out for those people who did not speak English at that time, they had to define certain principles and rubrics and criteria for teaching those people English. And in order to do so, they had to go back to universities and ask them to design some kind of curriculum or manhaj to teach English to those Asian people or South African people or people from Middle East. Like, so they wanted some sort of curriculum to reach out for people's mind faster and help them learn English, because learning English is becoming more tolerant to American culture or English culture. Or French culture. That's why there's been
so how can I know if my mind will save the language in clusters? Or how can I know how my mind work right now? Does it save it in
so far there hasn't been any definitive source except for MRI. MRI and some experimentations on animals and human beings to see the brain mapping of neurons and how they transmit data from the brain cells to the articulation system to vocal cords, and how that is orchestrated and produced in a very symphonic and symmetrical way. But all of these kind of experiments are subject to a little bit of scrutiny, and we should not take them definitively as source of like saying, well, this is how the brain functions. I remember they've done a couple of experiments on 2 different people, and they were asked to do pretty much the same thing. And what's quite interesting is that, sometimes in the 70s and 80s, it was really hard to run MRI on people. Now, what they do, they put the person under experiment, and in that kind of tube, and they start asking him, "What is your name?" And they have to say, "My name is John." So they have to draw this kind of map and seeing where the word is coming out of. And what's interesting is that in every attempt, the brain signals as a response from a different place in mind and the brain. So in the magnetic resonance imaging or MRI, it's quite tricky to find out definitive place for language, because it seems to scientists that some people say it's the front lobe where the majority of language comes from, because if you go to those patients who had some injuries in the front lobe, they have some deficiency or some language disorder. Like they start saying, like some of the disorders are like they stop being able to produce auxiliary verbs. They teach them for tens of hours. They are native speakers and they know auxiliary verbs because this is part of their language. So for some reason, because of the frontal lobe injury, they stop using auxiliary verbs. So they become saying like he coming here, or they reading. So they don't use auxiliary verbs, and that's because of the frontal lobe injuries. So that is conclusively saying that probably the front lobe is the place where the majority of language happens. Plus, there's some sort of like, you remember in reading The Power of Habit, where we came across basal ganglia?
Yes.
That's also related to memory and habit. Language is attributively, well, it can be attributed to some sort of habit. So once people get injury in that part of the brain, or some sort of Alzheimer's disease, they might also develop some sort of like language malfunction here. Now, I'm sorry I'm dominating the conversation, but this is very tricky and broad and completely juicy topic to talk about. But we studied this as part of the magnetic resonance imaging in field, we call it psycholinguistics and neurolinguistics. Neurolinguistics is a completely revolutionary field where they study the neurons and how they transmit data or language, and how language is acquired and learned, because that is ultimately helping researchers and scientists develop a better model for understanding brain injuries, understanding how people acquire and learn languages, and designing better models for language learning and language teaching. And there's so many institutes around the world who fund a lot of research in that field. I think I've got a few books here about psycholinguistics and neurolinguistics. It's quite interesting topic. It's a combination of medicine and language. If you're interested, I can refer to some of
we can discuss it. I think
it's
more interesting, I think, than The Power of Habit.
I don't want to sound biased because this is part of my field, and I don't want to plunge P-L-U-N-G-E in my field, because that's going to be a little bit biased to my field. However, it deserves some attention here. Going back here, let me just refer back. Waleed, enough talking. I should stop talking here and refer back to blah, 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 blah. Stop sharing. Let me go back here. Now, I want you to tell me a little bit about this here, this part. Just give me a short introduction if you see it.
Yes.
The graph and the table.
The graph will illustrate data regarding the global water consumption and water use. It is the same meaning. in Brazil and the Democratic Republic of Congo in period of, okay. This is an introduction. Like we're describing the table.
Perfect. Moving here. First of all,
there's a considerable increase in the water usage throughout the 19th century, especially the agricultural consumption, which occupies a major intake and showing a dramatic increase, hitting it with we are giving a general concept that there is an increase in the water use throughout the mentioned century. The water used by the domestic sector rises gradually in the year of we're talking now about one of the sectors, which is the domestic. The words are very small. I cannot focus so much. 1960s onwards, reaching the where is it?
Sorry, I'm moving the text here. I just want to make the magnification of words so it becomes clearer to you.
Okay. Now it's okay. I think that then I'm taking each sector along and describing it. Then regarding the industrial consumption, it is in somehow average with the same steady growth starting around 1950s and progressing up to more than 1,000. Yes, like we are taking each sector in detail. Then we shift into the other table.
I just have an issue here of a comma where we have just to put a period, and then this is not a big deal, you know. It's just very minor thing. The first one,
like it's because of the typing. I knew those details already.
Of course.
Okay.
And then here also on the other hand, the second country containing 100 square kilometers irrigated land and 5.2 million people requires only per person, with significantly lower consumption in comparison.
Like I said, I didn't say lower because I'm saying in comparison. It is a low consumption.
Comparison.
استهلاك قليل.
Comparison.
In comparison.
Okay. No, that would definitely make sense. For task completion, probably you've nailed that here. Okay, so for writing, I think we're off to a very great start here. Like ultimately, your score is either 7 to 7.5, which is quite acceptable for this sort of performance. I really love this quality of writing with very minor slips of grammar here and there. They're not going to be really extremely dropping your score down, at least from my own understanding. So it's completely fine here. Now, enough of this score. I think we've done enough here. Going to going to the next part of the test here. Let me share our screen with so we can have a look. Now, I want you to tell me a bit about this test here that you've, like the mock IELTS mock test here. Do you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was.
You mean the listening, general training, reading? Reading?
No, this is for reading. We're talking about
yes.
reading. Do you want to comment about listening? I've seen the result of listening, and it's quite promising. Provided
it's the
that
same issue, like I said. This, as I said in the beginning of the meeting, it's the system. It has a fixed module of answers. So if I change or a little bit, they will not accept the answer. They will consider it's wrong.
This is just a simulation test, Zainab, and it's not definitive of your score. So if you're getting 5, that is ultimately not the deserved score that you should get. It is a simulation on which we kind of get a sense of the previous test, the previous fresh test of this year, the last year. And it gets us on track of knowing the majority of things that occur in tests and the kind of tricks that we have here and there. And if I were to recommend one major important trick regarding reading is synonyms. I think this is the trickiest part of the test, where people like here, for example, when we talk about lost cards, there's this question. For example, here,
yes.
What should you do first if you lose a credit card? Contact your insurance company, write a letter, contact the police, and make a phone call. Now,
they said you have to phone call your bank. I think your bank or your company.
Now, it's quite interesting that the majority of the questions here are using synonyms, not exact copy words from the passage, just to trick you to see if you are able to access any sort of, or if you have any kind of linguistic understanding of the differences here between make a call or contact your insurance company. Because making a call is pretty much the first thing. Did you answer this question?
I think I take the last answer, make a phone call.
Okay, that's the right answer. Because
really, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, according to my understanding, this is the right answer here. Let me check. It's number 9. Let me check.
It is there, that the second line, I think. If you look at the card, telephone.
9D.
No.
Okay, so 9D, and it's A, B, C, and D. Yes, it's correct one. Now, why is this tricky, Zainab? The answer is simple. They just want to check, if you go to the speaking section and writing section, they're checking the lexical diversity. If you're able to determine that this is equivalent and synonym to another word. That is simply the reason why they do not use synonyms. They do not use exact copy word here. So because the question is not going to be valid if they just copy the word from the passage here, like elementary school or high school. So what should you do if you lose your credit card? There's one word that I want to highlight here, which is why make a phone call is more important. And it's the verb do. Let me just go back here. Lost cards. If you discover that your card is lost, checkbook, debit card.
It's a telephone, the credit card company. Okay.
Give me 1 second. read the text below and answer questions 9 to 14. So if you discover that your credit, checkbook, debit card, or cash card is missing, telephone the credit card company. Now the word telephone is equivalent to the word make a phone call.
Make a phone call, yes.
See? So they're not saying make a phone call. So the first thing that you do is telephone the credit card company. Now, sometimes it gets tricky, and this is something we call distractors or mushattitat in designing question. Like, I assure you, every one of these questions, a committee of very good experts in language have convened the design. They have to create the exact right answer, but with modifications. So instead of saying telephone, we got to think of a make a phone call. And they create another copy of this, but very close in meaning. Like contact your insurance company. Now, insurance company is different from credit card company. So you have to determine that. And they give they give the distractor.
I thought it is the same as the first, but I
you get you get tricked because the word contact is the word similar to the word telephone. However, now when we talk about insurance company, some people, because of haste, they go ahead and determine that option A is correct. Also, option A is better. Like sometimes when we go for options, we tend to be biased for the first option more than option B, C, and D. It just like, have you in life in general, like when we are offered many options, we kind of like start comparing all of the other options offered to option A. And it's a human nature. I think it's very normal to go through that kind of conduit. Anyways, to this point, let me ask you this. What do you think is the main challenge of reading?
What?
So far, what do you think is the main challenge of reading so far?
The time
management. Okay, well, you got 20 questions. 20 minutes for each one of the passages. You're offered 3 passages, and for every passage you have 20 minutes. Now, the only thing that I should recommend more is to go through the list of questions for each section one by one before you go read the passage. Our purpose is not to read and understand the passage, but to answer only the task of answering the questions in the passage according to each one of the questions, and that's it. So do not spend a lot of time. Do not spend a lot of time wasted in reading the passage and trying to get to understand what the passage is talking about. This is not our goal. This is absolutely not our goal. Our goal is only to read the question and answer the question according to what the passage is telling us about, and that's it. Now, so far, I want you to take this test again. Not this one. I'm sending you a copy of a test on Skype. I want you to take it before the end of this week, probably tomorrow, the day after, whenever you are free and have enough time, and send me the score. Either you can send me your written answers and I can give you the grading, or you can directly report back to me with the score of this test. And we can incrementally discuss that to a point of getting a better understanding. We're just practicing, getting tips from here and there, practicing conversation. I'm sorry, today I spoke more than you. But I want you to at least take at least 10 reading tests before you take the official test.
Yes.
Now, one last thing. Are there any plans to take this test in the upcoming 2 to 3 months?
I
Have you
didn't
negotiated
plan
that with Jafar?
for that, but you said that it will be held in Palestine hotels, so I'm
Yes.
thinking of having it. Yes,
Now, before you make
I will logistic for that.
before you make the final decision, what I recommend is that you discuss this issue with Jafar. He's gonna give you also his own insight on that, and probably before the end of this year, you should have completed the IELTS test and you've taken it. When I'm very positive with a score above 7.5, pretty sure of that. They also do the interview now online. They bring you to Palestine Hotel and they have you sit in front of a computer and you do online interview and you are going to be determined. So all of the training that we've been taking here is going to ultimately help you get that kind of like pressure of meeting native speakers off your chest. That's the only thing that I wanted to say. So negotiate that with Jafar and think of any plans and I can help you. I also can guide you to 2 of my friends who registered for IELTS test to walk you through the process of application for the test and paying. Now they accept online visas. So it's going to be better and easier to pay of a credit card.
Okay.
Sounds good?
Great.
Now, what is something that you are going to take out of this meeting that we had today?
You want me to give you in a brief? How could I, how did I get benefit from this meeting? Do you mean?
Yeah, like generally speaking, is there any benefit that you got? We talked about linguistics today.
Yeah, I got so interested at that book that you mentioned, that how the words and like phrases are saved in our minds. This is something I didn't think about it earlier before. So I got so interested in that book, and I will ask you to send it to me.
Sure.
Definitely. Yes. Yeah, and something Jafar said to me yesterday, I think he said that you had a training session in Mahatta station, this station place. The last week.
I was invited. There's an opening of a training institute. They're funded by the station and ran by one of the people who is a newbie to the field of training, and he's doing a great job, and he's hiring native speakers to teach people there. So he invited me to deliver a training for just an introduction course.
Like, so do you think such meetings are beneficial for us, or it's a waste of time?
I'm not going to comment on that because this is a recorded meeting. So I am going to give you a side comment on that. However, so he asked me to deliver a speech. So I delivered the speech in front of people regarding the significance of English and how it is important for you in career and life. And we did, it's quite like, it's interesting. Like once you see me in person doing classroom training, it's completely different from online training. Now, I'm not going to say it's better. No, everyone has its own benefits, you know, and it has its own drawbacks. However, being physically among students is kind of like not the same feeling before COVID-19. Like I was very close to my friends and my students and get to very close proximity, talk to them face to face. Now, when I did that kind of workshop, it really felt strange. I was hesitant to approach them. They were wearing masks. They're like, kind of like once someone gets closer to me, I just
panic,
pull myself a little bit back. So it's quite different, strange feeling, like how COVID just changed people's proxemics.
Yeah, our conception.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting. Anyways, so I did that for an hour and then I just ran back home. That's in a nutshell what happened. Okay.
Okay, please just send me that book that you were talking about.
Definitely.
There's
there's a pioneer, but his in the field of cognitive linguistics, his name is Steven Pinker. What I recommend is not read the book or one of the books, like Stuff of Our Mind, Stuff of Mind. I think the title of the book is Stuff of Mind. But watch that 50 minutes introduction to language in mind. That is going to help you so much understand the field of language in mind. He's working in he's worked in Massachusetts, I think, Institute of Technology, or Stanford, I'm not sure, but he's really well-known professor in this field. I'm going to send you his video. It's around 50 minutes, and his name is Steven Pinker. He has so many books in this field. So,
the other thing that I get benefited is that not to discuss with people regarding the right pronunciation. Otherwise, they will think that I'm messing up with their ego.
It's quite tricky, to be honest. Like, pronunciation is one of the things
I will keep the information for me.
And pronunciation it's quite tricky. There's like no one single Bible that contains the definitive pronunciation. And that is because pronunciation is more related to history and geography. Now, one interesting thing about British pronunciation, for example, is that they don't say the R at the end. And American English, they have this sort of rhotic R. It's called rhotic, R-H-O-T-I-C. Back in history, and this is pretty much kind of a kind of bourgeois style and history related and geography related. Britain is closer to Europe, and by Europe I mean France, for example.
Yes.
And in that era, in 1700, around 1700 and 1600, the bureaucratic people were trying to set them aside from the crowd. So they were not using the same kind of language that lay people use. And one of the features of that era was to be able to speak multiple languages, like French. Being able to speak French was like a delicacy to their bureaucratic and aristocratic aristocratic people there.
Yes.
Since Britain is very close to Europe, they inherited this kind of style of speaking. So they started developing some sort of mix of imported French words, like they're talking about chocolate or they're talking about cake. They have this kind of weird names that you see in Mansour cafeterias right now, asking about cappuccino and this sort of things, you know? Sometimes I go through the menu and it barely makes sense to me.
It's only chocolate and milk.
So yeah, that is pretty much the influence of the French Revolution and aristocratic people who lived there on Britain. Now, interestingly, America was isolated from Europe by the Atlantic Ocean, and those people who had access to America had limited access to influencing a whole nation. Plus, it had some Aboriginal American Indian who lived there. So the influence of the evolution in Britain outnumbered the evolution and progress of English in the United States, including the R sound. So the R was preserved as it is in America. Now they say water because originally the word has an R at the end. Now, interestingly, that it evolved in Britain and people became saying it like water or water, but in the United States, it preserved its original form like water. So the water in the United States is older and more original than the lack of R at the end of certain words in Britain. Now, this is historically speaking. Now, how do you convince people that water and water are equivalent, but the whole difference in pronunciation is purely historical, not a matter of superiority of one accent over the other? It's quite challenging, you know. You have to go through all of this amount of details to help them understand that. So every nation has its own distinctive history and culture and tradition. By the way, people in New York pronounce certain words like people in UK, because New York and UK had some sort of mutual exchange of trade and harbors. But people in California were farther than those who lived in New York, so they developed their own Californian accent, like, you know, how I talk like that, you know, just like this kind of accent that they call it the Valley accent or the Valley girl accent, you know. It's quite different. Anyways, so far I need to shut up and stop talking about language. It's intricate and
it was a
complicated topic. And have you go back to your kids and enjoy some lovely evening. I'll be waiting for
thank you.
The link once you have enough time to finish it up and send it back to me.
Okay.
Have a lovely evening.
Thanks for the great information. Thanks.
You're more than welcome, my dear. Bye-bye.